gentlemen there, and welcome to another episode of Unlock the Door Radio, where we follow the model given to us by none other than Benjamin Franklin, that being to question authority. That's right. Whether it is the authority in education, whether it's authority in media or politics, it's a good idea to sit back, analyze it, and try to figure out if you're really being told the truth or not. Now, this episode tonight is somewhat of a follow-up. I'll explain that in a moment here. But, my latest book, Freedom from Conscience, this one here, it's part of the Freedom from Conscience series, but the new book, Freedom from Conscience, Deliverance from Evil, just came out. And I was talking to some young women today about the issue of none other than psychopathy. And as regular listeners know, the main heroine of this book series I have is a woman who has essentially a psychopathic personality. But she's also someone who she does the right thing, maybe sometimes for the wrong reasons, but still ultimately is a protector of the innocent. And one of the people today asked me, well, how'd you come up with the name Freedom from Conscience? And I said it was because it's a play on words. Freedom from conscience. And that implies a certain amount of perhaps superiority in the area of a person's conscience and guilt and all these things that seem to hamper human beings in their life in a somewhat, materialistic way, or if you want to go into Machiavellian politics, that sort of thing. Now, what I would like to do tonight, and I really encourage you to just sit back and give this a chance, because remember what I said, we question authority, and authority, at least society, always paints people that are psychopathic as being evil. And you get this idea from TV shows and movies that the psychopath is this crazy creature hanging out in your basement ready to pounce on you in the middle of the night, or some sort of crazed serial killer. And most aren't. As James Fallon a couple of weeks ago pointed out, a noted neurologist, neuroscientist, pointed out, many of our most beloved presidents of the United States, and I'd venture to say kings and emperors and czars and so forth around the world, actually score very high on scales that are used to measure psychopathy. And so it goes counterintuitive in today's society to say that there's things that we can actually learn from these people. But there really are things that you can learn from people who have this personality trait that you can apply in your life for good, whether it's in your occupation, your personal life with friends, or even your love relationships. There are things that you can apply from these people. Doesn't mean you have to be psychopathic, and it doesn't mean you have to turn to the dark side in some sort of Star Wars sort of sense. But it does mean that there are things you can learn. Because, if we take a look at that presidency, he mentioned Franklin Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan. I believe he threw in Bill Clinton as being kind of high on these scales too. The thing is that many of the traits of psychopathy are the reasons why we admire these people. And those presidents that you never hear of, Warren Harding, Gerald Ford, and so forth, these are people that score really low on these scales. So are they the ones that we sit back and admire and we make movies about their lives and we talk about? No, they're not. They're administrative. They were people that were kind of bland. They took the job, they did the job, and that was about it. They didn't inspire the masses. They didn't get in front of people and make comments like, ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Or, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Or, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Or, walk softly and carry a big stick. Okay? These are things that roused audiences. But they're not things that you usually associate with psychopathy, but in a sense, they are. And we're going to go into why and what it is you can learn and apply in your life. Because these people are not crazy, but what is it we see and hear on alternative media all the time? Oh, these psychopaths have taken over. These psychopaths are the ones that get, if they're men, they get the women. If they're women, they get the men. They're the people that just come into your life and like a ravaging lion and so forth. What enables them to succeed? Maybe there's things that you can apply that are not evil, but you can use in order that you can succeed. Okay? And again, one more thing before we go on here. And that is that I ran across an article, I mentioned it with James Fallon, and we talked about it for a while, and that is that they've done studies on people that do heroic deeds. The people that are most likely to, if they see someone getting beat up on the street by a gang, to go intervene and help, or if they see a cop beating up on some old lady or something on the street, they're the ones who will try to intervene or at least film it and try to do something. Whereas most people don't do anything. Well, they might film it, but they're not going to try to make any issue of it. They just go show their friends. The thing is that the people who are willing to take chances are the ones who are nonconformist. Society, many societies, in Japan, the old saying, the nail that sticks up is the one that gets hammered down. There's a Dutch saying, the person who sticks their head up above the crowd gets it sliced off. And many societies, Sweden has what's called Jantelagen and Logum, which essentially, at least in my opinion, benefit the people in the ruling elite, because then they can promote the ideal that no one's supposed to be anything but average. They're supposed to just blend in, and ultimately that means never questioning unless it's approved by the society. So you get far less nonconformity in these kinds of situations. And so then the people who have the traits of psychopathy, we're just going for convenience sake, we'll go by the basic checklist that Robert Hare has compiled. It's all over the internet in various forms, and you can look it up. And I'm going to deal mostly tonight with the cluster 1 traits. We discussed that in the interview with Mr. Fallon, Dr. Fallon, but let's just not go into a lot of what that really means. It's just basically the first set of characteristics that we associate with people with psychopathic tendencies and personality. Okay? And remember, most psychopaths, they have not committed crime. Or if they've committed crime, it's not something that they've gone to jail for. And most of them, it's a personality. It's a way of looking at life. And I'm going to go through this checklist, and I'm going to propose the things that people can use in order to excel. Okay, so let's just start here. Okay, one of the things, I was reading an article, it was more like a discussion after the article. It was an article about guilt, and it was dealing with the emotional and physical problems associated with guilt. Now, guilt ultimately, if we look at what really comes from, is when you feel bad about doing something that you've been taught is wrong. You get this feeling in your gut, your heart, or whatever, that, oh my gosh, why did I do that? How could I have done such a thing? And you have some societies, I'll throw it out there, you get some societies like Sweden, which they would make the average, there's a lot of people that talk about Catholics and Catholic guilt. Well, the Swedes, for instance, are a people that have twice the guilt that the Catholics feel, except most of them are at best agnostic. Many of them don't believe in God. Or I should say, actually, they don't take the time to really even consider God. It's a sort of apathy that the culture promotes. And so the thing is that the society still says you should do your best on all things. When you work, you should put 100% into getting that work done and make it very high quality. I think the reason why socialism has succeeded, well, at least on paper, in Sweden, is because the people have this kind of perfectionist attitude. So, whereas in Russia, where they used to have the collective farms, and if the weather turned bad, well, the people just went home anyway, and they were just employees on the farm. It wasn't that they were making money. They just, it didn't succeed. Socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it, collapsed. It was economically inefficient. In Sweden, the personality of people is this kind of, oh, well, did I do it right? And if someone questions it, it's like, oh my gosh, they've questioned it. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to have to go spend hours in fixing whatever I did wrong. So the guilt complex is very strong in countries like Sweden. But here's the article I was reading said that guilt obviously leads to depression. Okay? I mean, we could see that. If you feel really guilty about something you did, you're going to be like, oh, I'm such a terrible person. And you're just going to go down. And you know what that does? It lowers your immune system. When you're depressed, when you're feeling down, your body doesn't pick up. Your white blood cells decrease in your body. Did you know that? When you are down, your white blood cells decrease. And so you're susceptible to illness. You feel tired because your body's having to fight stuff off. And the fact that you don't sleep very well. And then you have something else which I think is very important here. Your testosterone decreases. That's right. That hormone that's responsible for, well, a lot of people would say aggression and competitiveness and kind of that, it's in men and women both. It's just men have higher levels and so forth, and the receptor cells within their body and their brain and so forth are a little bit, well, they're primed for the male body, but females have testosterone too, and so they need it. So if they're doing things like exercise, it increases testosterone. And, well, we'll go into some of the health benefits right now of testosterone. But the thing is, guilt knocks down testosterone levels. If you lose, it's been shown that if you were backing a political candidate and that candidate loses, testosterone goes down. If you're out there playing soccer and your team is starting to lose, your testosterone decreases. And you've seen this when you see the team that they get behind a couple of points, whether it's soccer or a few points in basketball, and suddenly they just kind of give up. That is part of it. That is part of the physiological processes that has allowed people to survive. You know why? Because when you're out in a battle and things are to the losing point, your ancestors that actually just kind of said, you know what, maybe it's time just to surrender, often survived. Okay? They might, now be taken over by the other tribe or country, but they survived. And so it actually has a benefit to having the testosterone level go down. But the thing is, with this whole fight and flight syndrome, the thing is, if you feel guilt, it's like you're losing constantly. You're losing, and that means you're not going to be as vibrant. You're not going to be as competitive. You're not going to be as energized. You're not going to be as creative. You're going to gain weight. That's right. Low testosterone equals major weight gain. So, and that's true for men and women. That's one of the benefits of exercise. Not only are you burning calories off, but it builds testosterone up because your body's having to do the repairs and the building up the body tissue, and therefore you feel better, and often you feel more competitive by going out for a run or a bike ride or whatever. But the thing is, psychopaths have a very, very, very low level of guilt feelings. Yeah, they don't feel it. Or if they do, it's a different form of guilt. It might be a disappointment at not reaching a goal, or a disappointment that, well, they did something and now their husband's screaming at them, or mad or something because of something they did, but they don't feel the guilt like, oh, I'm such a bad person. I wish I hadn't done that. I'm so bad. It's more of a, oh, okay, well, that was the wrong choice to make. If I want to achieve something, I'd better do it better next time. But it's not one of those gut-wrenching things to them. A psychopath does not feel guilt. They can go through their life, and sure, they can feel disappointed that maybe they didn't buy Walmart stock back in the 1980s. They'd have made a lot of money now. But they're not going to feel guilty. They're not going to be sitting there or laying there in their bed at night going, oh, I wish I hadn't done this to so-and-so, or I wish I hadn't done that. The thing is that maybe the thing that we can learn from them is that in their brains they use cognitive reasoning, which means they are sorting things out. They're thinking, okay, well, what's the cost-benefit analysis to what I just did or what I have done? And how can I change that next time till I achieve my goal? That's what, and then they can just fall asleep, get a good night's sleep. They're not going to be crying about anything, really. They are going to be thinking about how they can improve. And maybe that's something we can learn. Because most of the time when I hear people talk about guilt, it doesn't work very well with them. And I know some of you have a religious background here, maybe most of you. And you're thinking, but guilt helps us to repent of our sins. I'm not sure about that. Because when you feel guilt, what you often do is you actually wind up committing the sin more. It's like, for instance, you're on a diet, okay? And one of your kids brings home a cupcake from school and sets it on the table. Now, irregardless of whether they said you could have it or not, let's say you're just hungry and you're like, oh my gosh, I love those chocolate cupcakes. So you give in and you eat the chocolate cupcake. And then afterwards, the average person's like, oh my gosh, I ate my daughter's cupcake. And I also just blew that's more calories than I would have had in like 1.5 meals on my current diet plan. And oh my gosh, what am I going to do? You know what the psychopath would do? They just put on some running shorts and go out and go for a jog. That's their way of repenting. And then when their daughter was like, well, where's my cupcake? I ate it, but here's some money. Go get another one. Okay, that's how they would do it. But a lot of people, in fact, most people, I would venture to say, would just think, oh, I'm a loser, sit back, oh my gosh, why did I do that for? And then they could just say, you know what, just forget it. I can't succeed at this. And then they go and raid the refrigerator. Guilt works that way too. You know what, one time I had a sociology professor, and he asked the question, why is it that when Mormons become alcoholics, they become extreme alcoholics? Or why is it that the preacher or minister's daughter who messes up once with her boyfriend, has sex before marriage, many of them just suddenly go, whoa, okay, well fine, I might as well just go out there and play the field. It's because the guilt. One of the ways to get rid of guilt is just to get rid of whatever's causing you the guilt, so you just go ahead and do more of it. Okay? That is a good point. I was reading an article about psychopaths. It said that when you have a situation where there's a lot of temptation and everyone's doing it, and I can't tell you how many times I've been at parties, social occasions, whatever, and the people who actually are, they're many of them raised really religiously. I've seen this happen with Christians and Muslims and even. And all of a sudden the alcohol is pouring, everyone's going, oh yeah, have some alcohol, and they give in. Very rare that people just say no thanks, forget it. It's hard to do unless you're psychopathic. If you're psychopathic, you're totally not. You don't care what other people are doing because you're looking down on them as being conformist anyway. Yeah, there's a certain arrogancy I'll talk about in a few minutes that psychopaths have, but that arrogancy often helps them to say no to the temptations. That is why most of your people who are psychopathic of any age tend to be in good physical condition, because to them they are making a statement with their bodies, and also they're able to say, "No, I don't want that." They go at it with a intensity, and that's something we can learn. I'm not saying you should just go out there and be amoral, but I am saying that guilt does hold us back, and maybe, depending on how you've been raised and so forth, you should try to look at that and think, is it really going to help you to feel guilty about something? Maybe you should look at it a little bit more like, okay, this is not something I should be doing. Maybe I shouldn't be drinking this alcohol. Maybe I shouldn't be sleeping around. And to do it in a way that's not like, well, if I do this, I'll feel so guilty. Because you know what? Most human beings give in to the temptation if that's all that's holding them back. The psychopath doesn't. I noticed one of the top 10 one of the top 10 professions that psychopaths are attracted to are religious leaders, clergy. That's kind of interesting. That's something that attracts them. But I think you could be a very good rabbi or pastor or bishop or whatever, and be a psychopath. Because as one of the guests I had, and she wrote a book about, she said sociopathy, but she pointed out she was very religious. She was a very devout Mormon. But her ideal is that she looks at things that are good and bad and says, okay, what's going to benefit me in my life? Should I do this? Should I not do this? She doesn't look at it like some people do. Well, that's wrong because my parents told me it's wrong. Psychopaths don't think like that. Okay? They really don't. They don't look at authority in any high regards. They like to be authority. They like to have control over other people, but they don't listen to authority. So they'll undermine it. They're the ones that when no one's looking, they'll do something. Okay? They're the one. And while some people will be like, no, I won't do that because it'd just be the wrong thing to do, they're doing it because, well, so. And they'll justify it in some way. They'll come up with reasons why you should do it too. But anyway, we're getting kind of bogged down there. But I will say this though: it could be good or it could be bad. But most of your psychopaths have very little, if any, empathy. But I have to modify that a bit. Recent studies have shown that psychopaths do have empathy, but they have a way of shutting it off very easily or turning it on. So they can have I've heard about even serial killers. I mean, remember I said most psychopaths are not serial killers, but I've heard about some serial killers where they do have families of their own, and if something happens to their children, it really bothers them. They feel sorrow. They can cry over something that happens to their kids. They don't cry over other people, but they can if it's their kids. They do have the empathy. It's not something that's missing. It's not like being a diabetic, type 1 diabetic, and your pancreas is turning out no insulin. Okay, it doesn't work that way with psychopaths. They do have empathy. It's just that they can very callously turn it on, turn it off, just like that. Now, I know Hitler, according to one of my guest, was not a psychopath. He was a narcissist with a few other mental conditions going on simultaneously. But he was a narcissist. But he instituted lots of laws in Germany about protection of animal rights. He was really into, well, I love animals and stuff like that. He could go bomb Warsaw, but at the same time, he was really, he really loved his dog, and he put in a lot of laws that restricted what you could do to animals. So, it depends on what you want to put your empathy into. Now, I'm going to bring up something else here, and this is one of the biggies, and that is glib and superficial charm. And I'm going to combine that with the arrogance that comes from psychopathy. The thing is, imagine yourself, you're in a room, and there's some people that you need to talk to in order to make a sales deal. Now, a lot of times, people feel intimidated. They see people that make 10 or 20 or 30 times more money than they do. They see people that have made it in the world, or that have inherited it, or whatever. And they feel intimidated by that. Okay, who am I to go try getting this business deal with this person? You know what? That's going to come across to those people. They're going to see your weakness, and they are not going to respect you for that. Okay? They might be psychopaths. There's a pretty good chance they are psychopaths. But you go in there and you start guessing that, they're not going to want me. They're not going to want what I've got to offer them. They're going to see that, and they are going to just like, okay, well, see you later. Strength gets respect. And one of the things about psychopaths is they do have an arrogance. Yes, they do look down on people, but you can have a psychopath that has been raised in a family in the ghetto, 9 kids in the family, poor beyond any, measure. They're poor. And that psychopath that kid that turns out psychopathic, can still look at other people that have lots of money or lots of power or lots of fame and think they're better than them. And the thing is, if you can control that arrogance, and use it to an advantage to make yourself a little bit stronger, believe in yourself. Okay, you don't have to look down on people and think, I'm better than you. But you can still believe in yourself to the point that when you walk into that room, you're an equal to those people, because that's the way psychopaths look at things. Not just equal, I'm better than them. And that's where you get success. That's why they're such good speakers in front of people. They don't get tongue-tied. They're not shy. Okay? They can get in front of 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people and talk. And they're okay with it. They love it. There's a certain narcissism that it feeds into this. And we admire that trait. Well, they're just kind of looking at it like this is a show. They're like an actor or actress. Please vote for me because I care for you. Okay, how many people does this person really know in their own life? Not that many. They don't care for you in that sense. It's like a celebrity. I want to thank all of my fans. I really love them. Oh, really? Can a person, if you're a famous rock star, can someone love 20 million people that just bought your last CD? That's impossible. Alright? But the thing is that a psychopath can do that. Because it's just words to them. And they're pretty words. And you can make them flow really well. And then you could convince people and move people. That's power. And if a person believes in themselves strong enough, take a little bit of lesson from the psychopaths, then they can be better speakers. They can take risks that other people wouldn't take. Okay? They'll do the dangerous stuff because it's like, okay, this is fun. It's a game. So this is why I think they do succeed so much in our world. Now, I want to say this, though, about arrogance. That seems to sometimes it can help, sometimes it hurts when it comes to psychopaths. The character Sherlock on TV. If you haven't watched that show, you should. It's a really good show. But the character Sherlock, he describes himself as a pro-social sociopath. And just for the show here, let's just say, psychopaths, sociopaths. Let's just say the same thing. But the thing is, he comes across awkwardly. Yeah, he's really good at what he does. He can get in there and solve crimes and read people and all these kinds of things, but he's socially awkward. That kind of makes me question whether he'd really be a sociopath. It's just what Fallon said too, and I've said it on many of my shows dealing with psychopaths. The best psychopathic character in the movies is James Bond. There's a guy that, he fits all the characteristics. He's very, but at the same time very violent, shows no remorse after, shoves someone into a meat grinder, and, just walks on and fixes his suit and grabs a martini, and whatever girl, whether she's, the innocent person or the villainess that's trying to kill him, he'll have her in bed, okay, in, just a couple minutes in the show. And the thing is that he is he does display that kind of arrogance, but it's an arrogance that people love. People want to have people they can believe in. I'll say this, if you're a man, women like it when you show strength. You could be you could, I'm not going to say plumber because plumbers make a lot of money, but you could be someone who's not really that rich. Walk out on into a club, and if you believe in yourself, that is going to come across. I've heard the idea that when you walk into a club or something, or I don't know, club or church dance or whatever it is, project the idea through your mind that you are like 10 or 15 feet tall, and this event is being held in your honor. And if you get that personality down, see, that's what psychopaths believe all the time. When they walk in a room, they're the center of attention, whether they were meant to be the center of attention or not. Now, that can irritate people, but the thing is, have you ever noticed that the kind of, I'm talking to the men here, you ever notice that the kind of men who have this kind of attitude are the ones that they're not sitting alone in the corner, okay? They're the ones who the girls are like talking with, because women like that kind of strength. And I think actually ultimately it would be true too for female sociopaths and psychopaths, that people would be drawn to them because there's a certain magnetism, and it's because they believe in themselves. I've known people, men and women both, not very attractive, but they sure believed in themselves, and they were like magnetic. And I've known people that on every beauty scale that you can look at, you can have a situation in which they're the ones sitting in the corner. No one's paying attention to them. So this is something, again, we can learn from the psychopaths. And when it comes to that kind of rejection of shyness and not being self-conscious, then you're able to talk. And one of the traits that's kind of interesting about psychopaths is that often they will say the most bizarre things, because they don't really have that fence that goes up saying, this is inappropriate, you shouldn't be talking about this, or you shouldn't say that, or whatever. They could blurt things out. But you know what? Some people would consider that ill-mannered. But again, who are the people flocking around? Who are the ones that get the success? Who are the ones who make the business deals, go home with the cute girl, whatever? It is the person who is that. They can be ill-mannered, they can be all those kinds of things, or they can be charming as well. Depends on whatever they want to set as their agenda, and they'll be the successful ones. If you're shy, you sit back, you don't brag in some way. I mean, there's ways to brag about yourself without like, hey, look at me, I'm so wonderful. You got to use some diplomacy on that. So the thing is, you got to sell yourself. You're selling yourself in any social situation. I don't care. Again, if it's business, religion, romance, You're
One of the
constantly
people
selling
ask me,
yourself.
well, how'd you
The
come up with the name
psychopath
Freedom
knows
from
that.
Conscience?
You know what's
And
really
I said,
interesting
it
though about the
was,
psychopath?
because it's a
When they were,
play on
most
words.
of them, when they were young,
Freedom from
usually were
conscience.
picked on in school.
And that
They
implies
were
a
the
certain
awkward
amount of
kids many times.
perhaps
Because
superiority
again, they didn't understand the
in the
emotions
area of
that were involved when they were
person's
growing up. They
guilt
didn't
and
feel the
all
things
these
that
seem
other
to
people
hamper
do.
human beings.
Now, people with Asperger's sometimes
In
kind
a
of blend in the same
somewhat,
way. You know, they're
materialistic
people.
way,
They
or
don't
if you
understand.
wanna go
They have the feelings, but they don't know how to process them
that
very
sort of
well.
thing.
So
Now,
they're awkward in communication.
What I would like
The
to
psychopath doesn't have
and
so
I
many of the feelings,
really encourage you to just
but they're able to
sit back
analyze them.
and give
So, like a
this
good
chance.
actor or actress, they just
Because
watch people and
remember
say,
what I said, we
this is
question
what I do
authority,
in
and
this social
authority,
situation.
At least society always
Okay,
paints
I'm not thirsty.
people that are
Everyone's
psychopathic
raising their wine glass to make a toast.
and
Okay, well maybe I should do that and act like I'm enjoying it. Or if you're a politician
shows and movies
and you absolutely hate
that
sports,
the psychopath
it's the last thing you want to do. You're still going to act really excited when the team that you're supposed to be rooting for, because they're in your city or
some
state,
sort of crazed
or college or whatever, is winning.
As James
Because if
Brown,
you act like that, then people are like, yeah, all right. And you make friends that way. You make
neuroscientists
connections.
pointed
So
out.
that's the way the psychopath
Many of our
operates.
most beloved
All right?
presidents
And
in the
sometimes,
United States, I bet
you know,
say
that we can learn from
and
that.
emperors and czars,
Again,
and so forth around
that
the world, actually score
the interactions
very
we have with
high
people
on
are very
scales
complex.
that
If you want,
measure
if you're
psychopaths.
if you're a guy and you want to
And
get
so it goes
you want to get someone in a
counterintuitive
relationship and
in today's
married,
society,
a family, and
things
stuff like
you
that.
can actually learn from these people.
You're not going
But
to
there
win
are.
out by thinking
There
I'm just
really
not good
are
enough,
things
because you won't be
that
good enough. You'll be like the guy in those
you can
1950s
learn
movies,
from
you know, the best
people
friend
who
of the
have
leading
this
man.
personality
The best,
trait
yeah, sometimes
that
he,
you
most
can
of the time he
apply
wound
in
up being
your
the
life
best man at the
for
wedding at
good,
the end of the show.
whether it's
But he
in
still didn't
your
get the woman.
occupation,
Okay, he was
your
left out.
personal life,
So
friends,
again,
or even
you know,
your
nice
love
guys do
relationship.
finish last
There
sometimes.
are things
And let me
you can
see
apply
here. The
from
charm,
people.
again, it's
Doesn't
something
mean you
that
have to be
a lot of times you have to
psychopathic.
work
Doesn't mean
on.
you
But
have
one
to
of the things
turn
I've always
to the
thought
dark
is the best
side,
way,
some sort of Star Wars
the best thing you can
sense.
learn
But
from
it does
psychopathic
mean
behavior is
there are things
look
you
for the
can learn.
things that
Because
the
you know,
other
take a look at
person
that
will
president.
admire.
He mentioned,
You know, in my second book,
Franklin Roosevelt,
it was
Theodore
Freedom from
Roosevelt,
Conscience, Melanie's
John F.
Awakening.
Kennedy, Ronald Reagan.
She's
I believe
finishing
you
up
were
in college,
Bill Clinton,
but she
as-
uses a technique where she
you know,
goes
I
to
don't need
professors,
to go to. The thing is
male and female
that
alike,
many of the traits of
and in kind of
psychopathy
a
are the reasons why
flirtatious
we admire
way,
these
at the
people.
same time,
And those presidents
very,
you never hear of.
I shouldn't say
Warren
manipulative, but
Harding,
the way it is manipulative.
Gerald
She
Ford,
wants to
so
get them on her side, so
people that
she finds out
Ford
what
really love
kinds of
on
articles
these
they've had
scales.
published in journals,
So
and what their
are they the
interests
ones
are.
that we sit back
And then just
admire
it so
and
happens
make
when she's in a
movies about
conversation
their
with them,
lives,
she drops it,
talk
oh, I'm really
No,
interested in
they're
this
not.
sort of thing.
They're administrators.
And
They
those of you that have
put
tried
them
this
in
in
a plan.
university and college,
They took
you
the
know how
job.
that works.
They
You know,
took
you have
the
a
job.
you have a professor, I don't know, he's
That
written a
was
lot of
about
articles on potatoes or something.
Inspire the masses.
and
They didn't
you
get
say,
in front
yeah,
of people
I raised some
make
potatoes
comments
last year,
like,
and suddenly he
That's
lights
not
up
what
or she
you
lights
do,
up, and
what your
you
country
get a conversation
can do,
going,
what
maybe
you
potatoes
can
is the
do for
last
your
thing you
country.
want to talk
Or
about, but you
Mr.
know that they
Gorbachev,
want to
tear
talk
down
about
this
it.
wall.
That
Or we
is
have
a trait
nothing to
that
fear
you
but
can
fear
learn from
itself.
psychopaths.
Or walk
They
softly
use
and,
that.
carry
The
a
best
big
diplomats,
stick.
the best Machiavellian diplomats
These are things
use that
that
technique,
rouse
because they have to deal with
audiences.
people of a wide range
None.
of
Things
of
that you
religions
see
and
with
cultures.
psychopaths.
You know,
In a sense.
one time, just for the fun of it, I
We're
took
gonna
the
go
foreign
into
service
life
test.
And what it is.
And you know what really
can
bothered me?
learn and
I knew
apply
all of
in
the
your
stuff.
life.
I mean, I knew all of the stuff about
These people are not
geography,
crazy, but what is it we see
ethnicities,
here on alternative
religions,
media all the time?
history.
Oh,
I knew that.
these
But
psychopaths
I didn't
have
realize
taken
that they'd
over.
have a whole bunch of
These
questions
psychopaths are
about
the
pop
ones that get-
culture.
you know, if they're men,
You know,
they get
and
the
things.
women,
But
if
you
they're
know
women,
what?
they get the
Later,
men.
it made sense
They're
because
the
as
people that-
if you're
that
working
just come into your
in a
life
situation
like
where you're
rabbit
dealing with
lion
people
and
from
so
other
forth.
countries,
What enables them?
you got to know the things that's going to kind of get them going.
That are
So maybe it is good to have a little bit of knowledge of what the popular music trends are,
Okay. And again,
and so forth.
one more thing before we
And
go
so,
on, and that
yeah.
is
is it manipulative? Of course it is.
With James Fallon.
Maybe you really, really, really hate to talk about a certain symphony that is in this person's country that's really famous. Maybe the last thing you'd like, if you're a diplomat having to work with Russia, you hate ballet. But you know what? You're going to have to know about it so that when someone brings it up and says, maybe you and I could go to the ballet and talk about it, and you got to act really excited, like, they're the ones wonderful, let's go. And all while you're going, oh my gosh, I really didn't want to do this. But you know what? Again, it's part of the charm that you have to turn on to get your, to get things in life.
Make any issue of it. They
Now,
don't show their friends.
Another area that I'm going to deal with is that psychopaths
are the
really,
ones who
really,
are
really
conformist.
love
Society-
to do things.
Many societies.
They are
Japan,
are easily bored.
the old saying.
I'm not going to go into the whole
the
serotonin
nail that's
levels of
not-
the
that
brain
sticks
and those
up is the
theories,
one that gets
how
hammered
it works
down.
on the
There's
amygdala
a
and so
Dutch
forth.
saying,
But I am going to say
the
this.
person who sticks their
If
head up
you
above
are
the crowd
easily bored,
gets it sliced off.
you're not content.
And many
You're
societies,
going to look for
Sweden
things
has what's
novel.
called,
You're going to look for new
Jensel
experiences.
and
You're going to
Wolf,
want to do
which
all kinds of
essentially,
wonderful
at least
things.
in my opinion,
And let's just talk about romance for a
in
moment.
The ruling elite, because then
You're
they can
with
promote the
someone that you
ideal
really. Let's say I'm going to put it into the context of being a woman.
They're supposed to just
Yeah, this
let
time,
in.
not just guys,
And
but
ultimately, that
women.
means never question
Okay, you're this gal, and finally
let's
this guy you really like is
by the
talking to you.
society.
And he says something
far less
about,
conformity.
extreme sports or something. And you've
And
never
so
done maybe
then
mountain
the
biking
people
on
who have
some
the traits of
steep
psychopath,
desert pathway or
we're
something
just
like
gonna-
that.
For
The
convenience,
thing is
we'll go
that
by
his
the,
mentioning it,
the basic
a woman who is psychopathic is going to be thinking, you know what, I can do that.
It's all
I'll
over
bet
the
you I can do
internet
that, and I
in
can do
various
it better than
forms.
this guy can.
And
Well,
can look it
pretty
up.
soon you're going to be on a
We're gonna
date
deal
with this guy, and you're going to be
mostly
mountain biking
with
down this
the
rocky
cluster
ravine or something.
we discussed
But
that in,
that's just the way they operate.
Dr.
And
But
let's say
let's
a
just
relationship
not
starts.
go into a lot of what that really means.
The
It's
thing
basically
is,
the
this
first
woman's not going to
set
be the
of
one who's going to be
characteristics we
content to sit
associate
there and
with
watch
people
TV
with
and,
psychopathic tendencies.
spend the evening just cuddled up on the couch and
most
so forth.
psychopaths, it's
They're going to be someone
they
that,
have not committed
this is
crime.
going to bore them.
committed crime. It's not.
They're going to want either very
And
stimulating
most of them,
conversation,
It's a personality.
often
It's a way of looking at
argumentative,
life. And I'm going to go through
because
this
it's like a
checklist,
sparring thing
and
or
I'm
something.
going to
They're going to want to do things that are unusual, whether, again, maybe go out and do
in
some
order.
unusual stuff, go
Okay, so
hiking
let's
in the
just-
woods
let's
at
just start
night,
here.
or visit a
Okay,
graveyard in
one
the
of
middle of the
things, I was
night or
reading
something
an
like that.
article. It's more like a after
Doesn't mean they're
article.
weird. It just means that they like that
It was an
stimulation.
article
They like
about
to
guilt.
do the unusual
And it
stuff.
was,
I'm not going to go into the sexual
emotional
aspects, but my
and
understanding
physical,
is that people that have been involved with
uh,
psychopaths, the one area they say, I
associated
really
with guilt.
miss this,
Now, guilt
is the sex
ultimately
life. Because
is where
psychopaths
what really comes
are the
from.
people who,
Is when
in
you feel
bed,
bad
on the
about
kitchen
doing
table,
something that you've been
out,
taught is wrong.
on the football field,
You
whatever,
get this
they'll do it.
this
And they
feeling in
want
your
to do
gut,
the
your
novel
heart,
stuff.
or whatever. That oh
And
my
sometimes
gosh,
when they
why
get
did I
together with
do
people,
that? How could I have
they
done
are the
such a
ones
thing?
who
And you have some
they'll
society,
take
I'll
someone
throw it out there. You get
who
some
comes from a very
society
traditional, kind of sheltered life,
they would
and
make
they will suddenly
Catholic,
open the
you know,
world
a
up
lot
to
of
them.
people talk about Catholics.
and you'll think this is just the
Well,
most fantastic
these prisons are people
person,
that
and I'm learning all this stuff, and I'm really feeling liberated, and well, they'll get bored with you. In most cases, not always, but most of them they'll get bored with you too.
They don't take the time to really
But the thing is,
consider God.
These people
Sort of
really
apathy.
feel excited
And the culture
about the romantic / sexual
And so,
aspects of a relationship with a psychopath.
The thing is,
And you can apply that in that sense too.
the society
People don't like
says
boredom.
you should do your best.
Everyone
in all
likes a
things.
little bit of a
When you
thrill.
work, you should put
Okay?
100%
I've heard the
into
best
getting
place,
that
the
work
best
done.
thing to do if you want to take someone on a date is take them to a scary movie. Because many of the hormones that are produced by the brain mimic the same hormones that are associated with love, infatuation, and danger all at the same time. Because love is dangerous.
Attitude.
Okay?
Whereas in
one of the
Russia,
quotes I have on in my book
the
is,
farm,
there is
and
nothing
if,
as violent
if
as
the
love.
weather turned bad, well,
And in a sense, it's true.
anyway, you know, and
So the
they were
thing
just
is
employees
that
on the farm that wasn't
the psychopath
making money.
can really
They just,
get
you know, it
someone
didn't succeed.
and really get them
Socialism,
excited about the
communism,
relationship
whatever you want to call
because
it,
they're so novel.
collapsed. It was
And they want to try all these new
inefficient.
things
In
and so forth.
Sweden,
If they're in a
the
relationship with a
people
psychopath,
is
often
this
these are the
kind
ones
of,
who are
oh,
like,
well,
you
it's
know,
like, do
they'll
it
come
right,
home and say, hey,
someone
you know, why don't
questions, it's
we
like, oh my gosh, they
take a trip to Hawaii this
oh my
weekend?
gosh, what am I going to do now?
And
Well,
you're like,
let's go
whoa,
to
I mean, what?
whatever I did
We're
wrong.
not prepared, but
So,
you know, that's part of the
the
thrill.
guilt complex is very
And
strong.
that is something you need to apply in life.
It's like Sweden.
I've heard this, that
Here's the article I was reading.
couples who go
said
on
that
trips
guilt
together, especially
obviously-
unusual trips. I'm not talking about something that's like,
I mean,
oh,
we
let's
see
go
that.
to
You
a
could really
let's go
about
visit
something.
Paris
You're gonna
or
be
something
like,
like that.
I'm such
But something that's
a nerd, and it's
unusual.
gonna
Let's go
down.
backpacking
You know what that does?
in Thailand.
It lowers your
Or
intensity.
visit the
When
go
you're
hiking
depressed,
on the
when you're
Great
feeling
Wall
down,
of China,
your body
or visit
doesn't
Tibet
pick
or something
up.
like that.
Your white
Those are like
cells
adrenaline
decrease
trips.
in your body.
And the thing is, it's been found
You know
that
that?
these couples are
When you
happier,
are
and actually,
down,
it's better
your
to do things
white
like
blood
that
cells
than it is to
decrease.
buy a expensive present
And so you're
for your
susceptible
spouse.
to illness. You feel
Psychopaths know
tired.
all this.
Your body's having to
I
fight
mean,
stuff off.
they love to
And
do
the
all this
fact
kind of
that
stuff.
you don't
Now,
sleep
you may
very
wind
well.
up in a situation where
then
maybe you're kind of going,
you have something
how did I
else which
get
I
here?
think
This is
is
not the
very
way I
important.
was raised.
Your
If you're with one of these
testosterone
people, but it's still thrilling
That's
for the
right.
person.
That hormone
You've got to be
responsible
novel
for,
with
well,
people.
a lot of people would say aggression.
You've got to accentuate it, because those are the people that get attracted to. If you're just average, people say well, even in Sweden, average is best. But then again, the people that are not average are the ones who get success. And the ones that are venerated, even though the culture says not to. And in America, it's sort of the same thing. Well, I'm not going to take a chance. Let me, I don't want to break the rules too much. Sometimes you've got to bend them a little, because that attracts people. Remember, which people got the most dates? When it comes to men, the bad boys or the good boys in high school. Think about that for a second.
If you lose,
now there are some traits
that if you were back
associated with this that are also really quite positive too, and that is the fact that they are bored. Well, let me deal with the negative. They get bored with jobs really easy, and so maybe they only take. They're the kind of person that's had a job for 3 years here, 2 years here, 1 year here, and that sort of thing. They bounce around jobs a lot because they just get bored with it.
That is part of
Get
the
bored with occupations. Maybe some of the people that settled the United States originally were psychopaths, and they get bored with the East Coast, so they go into the interior and fight the Indians, and then go into a little deeper and deeper, that sort of thing. And then I guess wind up eventually in California. But that is, the thing about psychopaths. They do not like just to be doing the same thing all the time. So, if something comes along as an opportunity, whether it's a career advancement, they'll jump on it. They don't need to sit there, okay, well, maybe I should think about this for the next month. If there's a situation where someone's asking them, hey, have you ever thought about running for mayor or running for Congress or something? They're on it. Okay? Even if they may say, well, I got to think about it for a bit. No, they've already made their mind up. They want to do it. Because that's more of a thrill.
You're going to gain.
Okay, they're not looking at it like the average person. Like, okay, I've got to be safe here.
Major weight gain.
Here's where I'm at now, and I'm just going to play it safe. The psychopath wants thrill, and they want the adventure. Do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Not all of them want power.
Feel better.
Okay, I mean, they like to have control over their life, and they like to control others too. But sometimes they don't go for the power thing. So you could have your favorite professor in college could be a psychopath, even though being a professor, his way of having power is through knowledge and being able to impart that to people and write articles in journals and so forth and get attention in the media.
Well, they did
something. But the thing is, they'll take the risk. Whereas a lot of people, I'll play it safe.
They don't feel the guilt.
Playing it safe in today's economy is probably not where you want to be. I'm not saying risk everything.
Okay,
but
that was
try to broaden your scope. Psychopaths do this all the time. Hey, maybe I should try my hand at this. Maybe I could do this on the side here. Maybe here and here and here. And that will bring in a lot of success for you.
And sure, they can feel
Now,
disappointed that maybe they didn't buy
another thing I want to take a point about is,
but they're not going to feel
the danger is obviously
they're not
that
going to be sitting there or laying there
that
in bed at night going,
the psychopath often is doing things that are harmful to themselves. Now, I'm not asking people to do that, whether it's financially or physically or whatever. But the thing is that sometimes you do have to release your inner demon, so to speak. Carl Jung would have called it the shadow. The shadow part of your personality is what's creative. It's the part that will come up with solutions. It's the part that will get you places. It's not necessarily evil, okay? But you know what? Luke Skywalker would not have defeated the Emperor without the help of Darth Vader. And Darth Vader was a symbol of the shadow. Very psychopathic, okay?
It doesn't work very well with them.
Darth Vader was a psychopath. But he still did the right thing at the end.
Here. Maybe
so, just think about that for a moment.
Guilt helps us
we're running short on time here. I got to deal with these other things.
I'm sure about that.
The manipulativeness. Okay, I'm going to go back to the diplomacy. Psychopaths again learn how to use language very well. Okay, they know how to use. They know that changing one word here or one word there can change the meaning that people interpret. I mean, you remember Bill Clinton, I did not have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. Okay, well, you know what? Technically, he didn't. If you go by biology. But the thing, biology says, sex means that you have intercourse and there's a possibility of conceiving a child. The thing is that he knew what he was saying. Legal experts knew what he was saying.
Current diet plan,
but the average person was watching it at that time going, I don't know why they're picking on him. I mean, he says it right there.
That's their way.
Okay, because we want to have it. Most people want to trust people.
Where's my cupcake?
Okay,
I ate it.
But the thing is, when it comes to manipulativeness, that's a very what is it? What you say? Look up the word in the dictionary. Leader, manipulator. Look at the two. It's the same definition.
And then
you get someone to do something they normally wouldn't do. Okay, if I go out and say. If I go to a group of people around lunchtime and say, I want you all to eat lunch,
I had a sociology professor.
Well, I'm not a leader, and I'm certainly not manipulating them, am I?
Why is it?
Because they would have eaten lunch anyway.
When Mormons,
if instead I can persuade them in some way not to eat lunch,
alcoholics.
That's manipulation, and it's also leadership.
Daughter who messes
I give them some reason not to. And so forth. Doesn't mean I force them not to. It's not like Michelle Obama with her food campaign in public schools in the United States. No, you use other methods to get people to do what you want them to do. I've talked about population control.
Okay.
And how people are manipulated in today's society. You don't have very many people coming on TV saying, have less kids,
and everyone,
or something like that. And you gotta admit, where's the kids being born now anyway? There's certainly not that big a birth rate in Europe, Japan, the United States, Canada.
Many of them,
just not very many kids being born, but they're still like, oh, it's overpopulation, because people in these countries use more resources. They don't point out they also produce more, but because they have the machinery and all these other, ways of making things. But what they use is manipulation. You show pictures on TV shows. You only show one or two kids, or you show people getting married when they're like 35 or 36. Okay, and these kind of things get ingrained in the society to where it changes people's attitudes. But it's ultimately a form of diplomacy. Okay, so if you want to, maybe at home, be that, instead of screaming at your kids, or instead of spanking your kids, or something like that, be a little bit more psychopathic with them.
They are making a statement.
Learn how to use words and use actions and so forth to manipulate them into doing the right thing. Now, some people are like, but that's not right. Well, what? Is screaming at a kid, or threatening to spank them, or grounding them any better?
But I
Is that any better?
that guilt does
Okay,
hold us back, and
maybe the psychopathic person who knows how to be a little bit more cunning
and so forth,
in their family life
look at that
can get
and
their
think,
kids
is it
to do
really
what
gonna
they
help
want
you
them to do.
to feel guilty about something.
Okay, so there's something you
Maybe
could
you
learn
should look at it a little
from
bit
these
more
kinds of people.
Okay, this is not.
By the way, you can go onto my YouTube channel at Michael
Maybe I
Cross,
shouldn't be drinking.
and a lot of my interviews, both with people that have written about psychopaths or they treat psychopaths and they're negative towards them, or the psychopaths themselves. You can look these interviews up and check it out and see exactly where they're coming from. But ultimately, I think really in this
one of the top
day and age,
professions that psychopaths are attracted to.
we're seeing more and more of our jobs either outsourced
kind of
overseas
Yeah,
or disappearing or being replaced with robots. We have to kind of become more of a competitive people. Now, I'm not saying that as a people, okay?
Be a psychopath.
If you're listening to this,
as one of the,
I'm not talking to you like you're one in the 300 million people in America or
about
330, whatever it is nowadays. Changes every day.
She was very
or whatever country you're living in. I'm talking to you as an individual.
At things that are good and bad.
Okay?
And says, okay,
whether you're
what's
young,
going to
old,
benefit me in
man,
my life?
woman, doesn't matter.
Should I do this? Should I not do this?
The people that are going to make it are
look
the
at,
ones
like,
that can
some
employ
people do. Well, that's what my
strategies
parents
of
told me.
creativity,
Psychopaths don't
of
think like that.
competitiveness,
Okay?
and
Really
a determination.
don't look at authority
Determination,
in
by the
any
way, is one of those
high
things
regard.
that's usually associated with
They like
psychopaths.
to
You
be
know, they
authority.
get a goal.
They like to have
When they set their
control
sights on
over
something,
people,
they're like a cat
don't
that spots a
authority.
bird or a mouse, and
So they'll
they
undermine it.
will do
They're the
whatever
ones
it
that when no
takes
one's looking, they'll do
to
something.
achieve success
Okay?
at
They're the
catching
ones.
it.
And
Okay,
while some people be
you've
like,
got to
"I
have
wouldn't
these
do
kinds
that
of
'cause it's
abilities
just
in
the
this
wrong thing to do."
upcoming age. And if it's not,
They're doing it because, well,
if it's not necessarily
so,
you,
and they'll
what about
justify
your
it
kids?
In some way. They'll come up with
You
reasons.
can't
why
train
to
your
do it.
kids nowadays just to be
But
passive.
anyway, we're getting kind of
It's not going to
kind
work
of, bogged down
in
there.
the new
But I will say
economy
this though,
that's coming about.
it can be good,
So,
it can be bad. But
do I say that you
most
should
of
make
your
them into
psychopaths
psychopaths,
have
or if you're
very little
a
empathy.
woman, you should go, find a
Very little
sperm donor
empathy.
who's a
They
psychopath?
have
No,
to-
I'm not saying that.
They have to
What I am
modify
saying
that
is
a
that
bit.
they do have some traits,
Recent studies
whether
show
it's heroism, whether
they
it's
have empathy, they have a way of
individuality,
shutting it off.
whether it's
Very
achieving
or
goals
turning it on.
that you can apply in your own life,
So
whether at home, in romance, in economics, politics, or whatever. There are things that you can learn. And, well, one thing I've got to learn is to make sure I have a clock here that I'm watching. We're out of time now. I think I'm going to follow this up in the future with something on narcissism and psychopathy. But for now, let's just leave it at that and just take a look at some of the traits and see what you think. And see if what I'm saying is right or wrong. Question me, like I say at the beginning of the show. Question authority. Maybe what I've said is totally bogus, or maybe there's something you can learn there. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's up to you. So, I'd like to, wish you a happy rest of the weekend and a good week next week, and hope to see you, or at least, connect to you again on our little show here, Unlock the Door Radio, next week on UCY TV.
For more news, visit pigmynews.com.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UC